how do you create strong communities? How do you create these communities that we're talking about where people can share ideas and take risks and seize the initiative and actually engage themselves? And this was a question I started with my PhD almost 15 years ago in social and political thought. So lots of critical theory, lots of Foucault, a bit of psychoanalysis, lots of philosophy. But I realized after wrestling with this philosophically, we actually need practical solutions about how we change the way people think, about how we think about critical intellectuals, how we think about how societies transform themselves. And so like Timo pointed out with the Goethe quote, knowledge isn't enough. It's about how do you act. And so I thought about what sort of a practical thing could one do to have people get out of their safety zone, how get people to understand that they need to move forward. And so like any other philosopher or political theorist, first thing that came to my mind was start a boxing club. And the other thing I realized, if you want to have strong communities, you need to have strong girls, right? You need to have more girls present, and you need to have girls who are willing to take part. And so my focus, I don't have an answer for all of the problems in the world this afternoon, but I have a model which we've been able to apply in certain urban centers, and I want to walk you through that. So strong girls, safe communities, making girls ready to lead, with the somewhat interesting interpretation of using a boxing club. I'll explain why boxing a little bit later, but the point was coming to Berlin, being a Canadian, being an immigrant as well, and wanting to do something for my community. So I started just around my house, which is in Neukölln in Berlin. Anybody here, I guess a few of us know where Neukölln is, so a somewhat disadvantaged community in Berlin with a large migrant population, not just Canadians or Londoners, which I know there'll be a few, but also a lot of the Turkish and otherwise Muslim communities, which is also why I wanted to live there, because it reminded me a lot more of Canada, where things are a little bit more mixed up. So a very vibrant community, but also a very disadvantaged community. We started off really, really small. Basically, we didn't have any sort of state support, but the point was just sort of getting rooms where we could, moving the tables out of the way, and starting to do boxing. And at this point, it was more for older teenage girls and young women in their 20s. But we realized that what was happening with us, the sort of changes we were happening, we should be doing with younger girls. At the beginning, it was basically me, a motorcycle, and a humongous hockey bag full of boxing equipment driving from school to school. And those of you who think that boxing is dangerous, driving a motorcycle with like this big on the back is more dangerous. But I mean, I guess some of us who've been seeing the moped drivers here in Morocco, here in Marrakesh, are thinking, well, then they're even more crazy. But I mean, motorcycle driving with something this huge or 6 people from your family is dangerous. But that's how the first few years of Boxgirls was. And then finally, the municipal government's like, okay, look at this. You're one of the few clubs where you actually have German kids, German girls, and Turkish girls doing sports. And oh my God, Turkish girls are doing sports. Because no one kind of understood how to knack it, as they'd say. And the point is that for a lot of Turkish families, self-defense and boxing isn't a sport, right? Sport is about entertainment, and they're somehow immodest, right, for young girls to be doing this. But we're like saying, oh no, it's not sport, it's self-defense. It's women protecting their dignity. Started in Kreuzberg, got a great mix of people, and then decided, okay, how do we sort of scale this up? So we started getting more schools involved. But then in 2005, the German parliament, in its infinite wisdom, decided to participate in the UN Year of Physical Activity and Sport. And so one of the categories was sport for peace. Now, those of you coming from other countries know that Germany doesn't exactly have a peace problem. But in a way, like what we saw in London recently, inner cities are also, kind of having trouble. And in Berlin, Neukölln, there's also a lot of issues around how can these communities be more socially cohesive. And so we entered with our little miniature volunteer-run, kind of left-wing, kind of queer project in the middle of Kreuzberg, up against like the German Football Association. But anyway, the German parliament picked us, and so we were one of the model projects. And so that meant we sort of got on the international radar. And the first place we were actually invited to go was Morocco. Because Noelle, she won the 400-meter race in the 1984 Olympics and was the first Moroccan, the first Arab, and the first African woman to do that. And anyway, she invited a bunch of us who are doing work with gender and sport to Morocco, and we went to Casablanca. And do any of you here in Morocco hear of the big women's run that they do there every year? They do a wonderful event. Yeah, okay, a few of us know. They do a wonderful event where they get all of the school kids together, and they run through the streets of Morocco, of Casablanca, through public space. I mean, people are shaking their heads because it's just not done that women would do that. Like the whole physical culture is very different. So just to create that, opening up that space. Anyway, she was the first invitation, which is why I'm also very happy to be invited back here to Morocco to talk about how Boxgirls has developed since then, because then it was the idea. But then, after the success in Germany, after we came to Morocco, then the next call was to go to Nairobi, because Nike, in its wisdom, or we can debate it, but anyway, Nike decided what they wanted to do was to create sports for social change networks. And so again, trying to help all these little miniature projects get the power of scale. So we're invited to Nairobi to work there with people who, I was just sort of invited as an expert, but of course everywhere I go, I'm like, well, where are the people boxing? And they're like, we don't know if there's any women boxing, because of course no one thinks it exists. But I'm sitting at dinner, and beside me is this rather well-built woman, very calm, and I'm like, okay, what do you do? And she's like, I'm the African middleweight champion in boxing. I'm like, well, thank you, whoever organized the dinner, seating. I mean, we all know this at TED, everyone's trying to meet everybody, and this time I'm sitting right beside the person I want to meet. And then she offered to give me a tour, and I was a little bit scared because everybody tells you about Nairobi being like Nairobi and you shouldn't leave anywhere, and of course we're in a very posh hotel, kind of like us enjoying here, and I'm like, oh gosh, where am I supposed to go to? And they say, well, my driver will pick you up. So I'm thinking, okay, sounds safe. Anyway, this really rickety old Toyota being held together with like coat hangers comes by. It's seriously the door. I think we've seen those sorts of cars. Anyway, so I'm like, but we get in the car, we drive deep into the Eastlands, into Kariobangi, and stop in front of this building, because I heard we're going to the sports complex, stop in front of this building, which is, beautiful, looks like an old church, I guess it probably was, like blue with like a peaked roof, and I'm kind of still feeling a little bit scared because it doesn't look like a sports complex. I don't know anybody, I don't speak Swahili, I'm feeling really kind of alienated, but as soon as I go in, I start hearing all the sounds of boxing, right? I hear the skipping ropes, I hear the pad work, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I know this place, and they know me, and so then we came and we started training and realized that we could actually, and there were women there, and there were women training, and we were able to start with them and start a sister project. And so Boxgirls Berlin started sponsoring Boxgirls Nairobi, and now they've built up, and they've got over like 400 girls that they deal with a year in our programs, like all over the Eastlands of Nairobi, in like 12 of the different townships. Well, they're not townships; they're estate areas. And so this is the crazy things, how conferences and sitting beside the right person at dinner makes a really big difference. But so we realized it was good that it made sense to us, and that we were able to move it forward, but if we were going to scale, if people like in Morocco were saying, okay, we want to do this here, then it's not good enough to have a good idea, unfortunately. You have to figure out what exactly works and what doesn't work, and how do you make it that other people can apply it, right? Scaling. But in any case, then we started asking other people to take a look at what we were doing, and this is a test. We were funded by the German Children and Youth Foundation. And one of the things that they did for us was to provide that the German Sports University took a look at what our girls got out of the program, right? And this is coming out of our sort of urban peace part. So one of the first questions was, tolerance and understanding about other people, right? And they're saying that after the program, like it went up 76%. So these are just the stats we have, but all it means is even if it was 5, I just say, okay, look, we're having an effect in the right direction. So 76, 78, I don't care. Point is, it's going up, right? So thinking about others in a different way, also feeling more secure in their own space, and then perhaps the most important and the strangest sort of jargon word, self-actualization or Selbstwirksamkeit, basically means, do you think that if you make some effort out in the world that something will happen, right? Do you believe, like all of us believe that, right? I think, because we're here and we're people who are taking the time to get some new ideas and get some more mind food to be at a TED conference, but I mean, a lot of kids just don't really think that anything they do makes an effect. And so that's why I'm happy about this last one, because it's the idea they're saying, I think I can make a difference, right? And now why does boxing do that? So first I'm going to talk about why girls, and then why boxing. The why girls part should be kind of obvious. It's called patriarchy. It's called girls not getting the same chances in life. It's called girls being forced to be estranged from their bodies rather than being in connection with their bodies. And it's about even in our society, even in like living in Germany, there's still, you can make a very clear argument that girls do not have the same chances to unfold themselves. They don't have the same opportunities. They are constrained in ways that boys aren't. And let alone if you go to Kenya or if you go to Kailicha, one of the settlements outside of Cape Town, where girls basically get pushed out of school, even if education is free in South Africa. It's not free in Kenya in the secondary level. So even if it's like technically possible, they still get pushed out. And they get pushed out and they end up doing things like selling mangoes at the side of the road, which makes them just vulnerable for every bad thing we can think of, which I'll just skip over, but imagine that bad thing. So we're going to focus on girls because enough people are focusing on boys, and because, as we said, we can't all solve every problem, so this was my problem. And then, why boxing? At first, I'd like to ask, how many of you have ever done any boxing or been in a boxing gym? Yay, okay. Ooh, photographer too. All right, where? In London, okay. And you guys? London, okay, London. I was born in London. Short aside, we like London. No. How about any other people doing martial arts? Judo, Taekwondo, Qigong, we'll throw in there. Karate. Okay, hands up, everybody. Let's just see. So quite a few. How many people here have like a daily routine, doing some Pilates, doing some yoga, doing some running? Sport is a big part of your life, part of your creative life. Okay, so sport. I think people get the idea that in order to be creative, in order to deal with the stress, in order to fight off the neuroticism, for any reason at all, sport's good. Sport's especially good for young women who want to be in their bodies and not be totally estranged, and especially just before they go into puberty, which is our point. And so the sport's good. Let's just accept that one. The point about boxing is that boxing makes you really confront your fear. And boxing makes you really understand courage, and boxing makes you understand you have to fight for stuff. Right? It's not just given to you on a plate and you can't just wait in the corner for some guy to ask you to dance. It's time to go and get the thing you want. And it's also a question about defensible space. Right? It's also a question about if you want to prevent a problem, you don't prevent the problem when it's there. You prevent the problem when it's off the stage. Yeah? And these sorts of metaphors, you can wonder about their teaching applicability. But the fact is, this actually gets through to kids. Believe me, a lot more than talking about Foucauldian, truth regimes, But that you actually explain the idea of space and frame. And this works, and this helps young women understand. And even if they don't understand it intellectually, or if that's not their gift, at least they then have some basic skills, which unfortunately you need in the streets of Nairobi, in the streets of Kailicha, and unfortunately also in the streets of Neukölln. And by that, I don't mean that you hit somebody. It means that A, you're not afraid that someone puts a hand up, because you realize most of the time it's not going to hit you anyway. And secondly, that you can stay calm and run off. And then what we try and do is, in addition to having focus on girls and the focus on boxing, the question is like, what's the peer education piece, right? So it's not really just we teach them boxing, we teach them sport, right? It's about having girls be protected in a bunch of different ways. So we teach them also media skills. We do a lot of outreach into their communities. We do work in their schools. We give scholarships to some of the best of them. We can't give scholarships to everyone because we're not that big. But again, that's the direction we're going. But we try and give like sort of 5 little circles of protection, which people all need. We all need that too, but especially prepubescent girls. So on the sort of the most outside circle is then in the community. So we do a lot of outreach work. We make a lot of arguments about the value of sports for girls. We do a lot of work around gender-based violence education, sort of at the level community, press outreach, and so on. Next level in would be at the school, right? Making sure that those schools have sports facilities and the opportunity for us to run our programs, and also that they're giving the right message around gender-based violence, and that we try and help those teachers who want to work with us work better. Then we work with the parents, which is hard, but we do it. And try and again empower them. And then the two smallest circles where we perhaps have the most impact is that we work by protecting that girl by putting her in a group of other strong girls, right? So I think we can all think of examples where we wanted to do something stupid when we were a teenager, and one of our friends said, okay, no, not with him, or not that car, or don't do that before the test, Someone smart kind of pulled you aside just from the brink and saved you from yourself, right? And this is what we're trying to do, is giving those girls a group of people who will give them good advice by having them be in a training group 2 times a week, having a chance to talk through stuff, with their peers. And then in the middle is the girl, and that she should be stronger and feel capable. But I've talked about that. I'd like to introduce you to somebody.
My name is Faith, ready to present you a poem entitled, I Am a Tool for Change. They say I look all different. They oppose me by the way I look, what I do, and how I move. I am proud to be a boxer, cause I know why I jab. I want to jab out HIV and AIDS. I want to jab out poverty. I want to jab out crime. I want to jab out rape out of my society and out of the world so that I can live in an environment where I am safe. I am proud to be a boxer. Thank you. Thank you.
So I get to meet young women like her. And then I'm confronted with, well, what then do I need to do? What do we need to do? Because like she's sort of done her part by getting to the point that she can talk like that, right? That she's able to understand what the issues are facing her community, which actually, unfortunately, are AIDS, poverty, and rape, you know, in Kariobangi in the Eastlands of Nairobi. And so what do I have to do? What do we have to do? What does the organization have to do? So we've basically got 3 challenges, which I'll end with here. So first of all, we need to make the argument, which is why I'm here sharing with you guys today, is to understand why sport, why physical culture, and even why sometimes strange sports. You think, why boxing of all things? You know, but how do you make that argument so that people who are investing in sort of unorthodox ways, fair enough, unorthodox ways of changing urban environments, that they do it? So a lot of lobbying, a lot of discussion, and a lot of, just like we're pulling up the statistics, a lot of working with other academics to say, let's put this in a box. Like, how do we get box girls in a box so we can like freely give away to other places who want to do this? How do we create a scalable model which has the quality but can be shared? Second thing is to understand how do we in the long run connect up the whole boxing thing and the whole sports thing to a greater sense of economic empowerment for the girls themselves. Because it's one thing to educate them, to help them finish their education, and to help them develop these skills, but if we're not able to give them a path on from that, then you're just giving them a problem at 18 rather than a problem at 14, which I'm happy with, right? If I can get that girl pregnant at 18 rather than 14, we've still done a lot. But like, we don't want to just push the problem back, and so that's why we're starting to explore and partner with organizations which are doing economic empowerment. And then finally is for our own strategies, like what are the ways that we can also diversify the different income streams that Boxgirls has. So in addition to working with funders like Comic Relief, we're also trying to do different leadership programs, because we see a lot of women, and a lot of men too, feel spoken to by this and want to come and work with our programs, doing corporate volunteering, doing like leadership development. And so that's another thing that we're exploring. So I think if we can do that, if we can make the argument, if we can help the girls have a path out of it, and if we can create a sustainable organization, then we're going to be able to help, you know, girls like Faith transform themselves and ultimately transform their societies. So thank you very much.